I'm sure he would be delighted to know that the greatest influence on knotting today, on its growth and development, is our international guild.
I think that's right.
And there's been a lovely sequel to that. You've met her, Ashley's daughter.
Yes, Phoebe Shardon, yes, and she is a member of the guild, and we've had meetings in New Bedford, which have been very, very rewarding. And
I think, am I right in saying she's delighted that her father's initiative and efforts and expertise are still remembered.
What would you? You've seen your guild come a long way to include all these members from your humble beginnings with just one meeting and a greater audience than you thought, and you've seen other people be presidents now over all these years. You know, what do you hope for as you see this grow and expand over the world?
I think that's a difficult question to answer.
That's why I asked it.
Yes, I have no clear-cut idea. I would like the guild to survive and to grow and to reach out, and that probably means reaching out into nations and territories that speak other languages than English. I think that has been a limiting factor. The French are now getting involved, and that's very welcome because they're a large country with a large number of people. It would be nice perhaps if somehow or other the knotting could spread to Chinese-speaking countries, to Arabic-speaking countries, to Spanish-speaking countries. But I'd just like to see it continue to grow and collect more enthusiasts.
And I see that one of the purposes of the growth of and the future is the growth of the guild, and the fact that one might say gives a stepping stone for the future generations. They don't have to start from square one. They can grow on our shoulders. They can learn, and we can see the quality of work that is being done by people today, even relatively newcomers, because they've got that flying start of that body of knowledge. They're not struggling entirely on their own.
Well, I know that was true for me.
Yeah, and exactly, and that's one of the bonuses that people get from the guild, is meeting other people's. And so, not everybody in the guild has the same interest in knots that you do, but you find those people that have those fields of interest that are similar to you. I'm interested in sailors, decorative and practical rope work, more than, as it were, new knots. But there are others that's the thing that really turns them on.
We may know less than half of all there is to know about knots.
Of course.
The preoccupation of previous generations, whether they were sailors or climbers or whatever, was with knots that worked, and usually knots that worked in old-fashioned hairy brown rope, and anything that didn't was viewed with disfavour and discarded. These days we're freed from those constraints. We can explore it for fun, as an absorbing hobby, craft, for whatever reason, and perhaps today there are more scholarly people as well who are coming along with a university background, with all the research benefits that brings,
the mathematics and all of that,
who can look into this and tell us a lot more about how knots work and why they do what they do. And of course there are still, coming back to what we started with, new knots turning up every year.
So it's more than just going into a Borders bookstore and buying a knot book, isn't it?
Oh, I hope so. I hope so.
It's picking up a bit of the line and having a go as well, and looking back and looking forward.
I think so. Thanks for your time.
That just about ties it up. You're welcome.
All right.
I'm Percy Blandford. I live in Stratford-on-Avon, right in the middle of England. I've been a member of the International Guild of KnotTyers since its inauguration. We didn't have a president for the first 12 months, but for the next year I was president.
So you were the first president of the guild?
I was the first president of the guild. It was a much smaller thing there, and although we had the same name as we have now, it was called the International Guild of KnotTyers. I began to wonder at first about this term international. Should we attract many people from overseas? Of course, nowadays we have, and I think the membership now is more than 50% overseas compared with English. But in those days, the total membership didn't reach 200, I don't think. The first year it was probably not much over 100. And today, of course, we've just had a meeting with well over 100 members sitting around in the same room.
So
we couldn't have done that then.
No. Now you're 90 years old.
Yeah, nearly 91.
I understand you're still a working journalist.
I am, yes.
You've published over 100 books.
Yes, I've published 111 books. 6 or 7 of those have been on knotting. All of them are non-fiction. I'm not a novelist. But most of them are practical books and mainly woodwork and metalwork.
I understand you used to make kayak kits.
Yes, I didn't make them, I designed them.
You designed them?
I designed boats of all sorts, but largely, to start with, it was kayaks. And I think I must almost certainly now have sold more boat plans in the world than anyone else. We thought the thing was running into the ground recently, and we finally stopped. But that's over nearly 60 years of selling boat plans, and the total is 176,000.
Wow. Now, how did you actually come by meeting Jeffrey Budworth and Des Posse and get invited to the first meeting?
Well, I'd already written some books on rope work, and
this was over 20 years ago now.
Over the 20 years,
yeah.
I'd written the first knotting book, I suppose, 30 years ago.
Okay.
And they called this inaugural meeting, and I heard from Jeffrey Budworth then, and I was invited, but unfortunately I couldn't get to that actual first meeting, so sent an apology. But I've been turning up at just about every meeting ever since. And my wife has. She was interested in macrame. She died last year. And she was the first supplies secretary of the guild. Must have done the job for about 10 years. And she sent books and all the other publications all over the world.
But did you know Jeffrey and Des before?
I didn't know them before, no. They knew of me because of my writing,
because you'd be writing.
And that was why they got in touch with me.
Well, they told me that that there was a claim of a new knot that had been invented, and they were called in to authenticate it, and that's how they got together and originated the idea of the guild itself.
It could have been, yes.
Yeah.
That new knot has turned out to be something that was already in Ashley, apparently, under another name.
I understand.
And for another use.
Yeah.
But it is there.
But your interest in knots and rope work goes back 10 years before the guild, at least, or more.
Time. Oh yes, I joined the Scouts, the Cub Scouts, when I was 8.
What year would have that been? That
would have been 1928, isn't
it?
1920.
Yeah.
I joined the Cubs, and I've been in the Boy Scout Association ever since.
Yes.
And that's really where I got my original interest in knotting and rope work. And that seems to apply to a very large number of the English members of the guild.
It does, yeah.